Learn how to use define property to create or modify an object property. Here's my boilerplate code. And in this example, we're going to be looking at how you can use the Reflect.DefineProperty method to create or modify an object property with fine-grained control over its behavior. Normally when you're adding a property to an object, it gives no restrictions. Anyone can change or delete it later. But the particular method we are looking at here, which is the reflect define property method, let you add a property with a built-in rule book. So you can use it to create a property and explicitly give it an instruction. For example, you can explicitly say that, okay, this property is locked down and cannot be rewritten, or this property is locked down and cannot be modified. So let's go inside the script part of my code so that we can look at an example together. So the first thing to do is that I need to make an empty object. Start with an empty object. So I'll go ahead and make an empty object now. So let me call the object name user. And since it's an empty object, I'll just use an open and close curly braces. So this is our empty object. So now that we have done this, since this method deals with property of an object, let's try and define a property, and then we add a specific behavior configuration to it with a specific behavior configuration. Okay, so I will go ahead and make use of this method now because I want to use it to add a property with a specific behavior configuration. So I will call on this reflect object dot define property. Now, since it is a method, so inside this method, I'm going to pass in my object, which is user, and I want to add an ID to it. And inside it, I want to add a value 1, 2, 3, a number value, as well as comma not semicolon, since it's inside an object, so not the end of the statement. And also I want to write another property called writable. Whether this behaviors is writable or not, then I'll set this to false. So doing this has turned this object into a read only. And let's see. So I'll go ahead and try to output this cons document.get element by id demo dot inner html equals to now user id plus IDs. If I do it this way, this is not going to work. It's not going to show anything. As you can see, that nothing is displayed on my screen. But if I want to get it, I need to call the object and then call the property of that object. Now you can see user ID 1, 2, 3, user ID. So let me add this, and you should see user ID is 1, 2, 3. Now let's now try to attempt to overwrite what we currently have. So attempt to overwrite what we currently have. So I'll just log this inside my console so that you can see user.id. And of course, if you come here and inspect through your browser, you should see 1, 2, 3. But since I want to attempt to override, that means I will try and use another value for the ID. So let me now set it to something like maybe 333. And now you should see inside my console that it's still 1, 2, 3. The new ID I'm trying to set is actually not taking any effect. So This example shows us how Reflect.DefineProperty method adds an ID property to an empty user object, and by setting the writable false, so this ID is permanently locked to the value that we have here. But assuming this is true, let's see what is going to happen if we change this to true. Let's see, true. And now you can see that the new value of our ID is 33. So the essence of this method, Reflect.DefineProperty method, is that it allows us to define properties of an object with a specific behavior configuration as to whether those properties will be read only or they will be accessible. For example, if we have something else like maybe name, and we'll call it anything. Let's say Joe. Yeah, something like this. Now, if we try to change this from user ID, username is now username. Now you should see undefined. And why is this undefined? Well, that's because I've not passed it here. So I need to pass it here like this as this thing, what is it called? A name. It needs to be, oh, sorry. Yes, user.name. I just want to use it to, show an example of something. Descriptor must be an object got name. Yes. Uh, user.name, user.id. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is this, that if we have another value, say we have something like maybe an ID2 or something, just about anything. So, and here, okay, sorry, let me still use the name. And then here we have it, say the value, for example, we have it uh, like the way it is currently. So if you look at it, you will see that what we have here is still going to be that we are only able to see the name. We will not be able to change it, even if we try to, update it at the very end of what we have. So this is how this method allows us to, operate in JavaScript. So it allows us to define a property with a specific behavior configuration. So I change this back to an ID, and you can see that what I had before is now shown. So if we want a property to be completely hidden, so it doesn't show up, for example, in a for in loop, so we'll just actually change what we have to the property. So by doing this, you can easily, set your code if you want it to be editable or a read only, just as we can see in this example.